Ahsoka Tano is a Star Wars citizen with tremendous staying power throughout several eras of Star Wars. Originally disliked in the early Clone Wars series era, Ahsoka grew and became a beloved staple. With much thanks to her creator, Star Wars visionary Dave Filoni even jumped mediums, going from animation to live action. But that got us thinking, who should be the next Star Wars character to get the Ahsoka treatment? Which characters deserve to leap from their original medium and get their own live-action starring series going, or at least pop up as a live-action cameo someplace? There are lots of candidates, but here are our top 5 choices, along with the one who absolutely should not be inducted into the Star Wars on-screen canon. But before we go on, we must warn you, there will be small spoiler warnings for different Star Wars comics and games because we can't really explain why the characters deserve the adaptation without telling their stories. You get it. If you don't want to know, time to head for the unknown regions. From the beloved Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Darth Revan, or Revan, is the infamous fan-favorite lead who hasn't appeared much at all in Star Wars media, absolutely primed for a live-action starring role. Like most classic BioWare leads, Revan is a customizable character, but in Legends material, Revan is referred to as a man, so we'll go with that version here. Set in the High Republic era, the player character knows of Revan as a legendary Sith Lord who fell after being betrayed by Darth Malak. Eventually, we learn your protagonist character is Revan after the Jedi, led by potential love interest Bastila Shan, erased his memories and planted a false identity in his brain to get him to topple Malak and push back against the Empire. And then we learn both Revan and Malak, nay, Alec, were former Jedi before that and were brainwashed under another sect of Sith after becoming heroes of the Mandalorian Wars. In Star Wars The Old Republic, Revan even has a connection to the Emperor after being kept alive for thousands of years, and experiences his soul being split into light and dark sides. Anyway, Revan has a wild and long story, and while almost all of it is relegated to non-canon, there is a Knights of the Old Republic remake on the way, making it a perfect time to re-add him to current lore, building his story out of pieces of his legend. As a very popular, powerful, and versatile character with an incredible supporting cast, meatbags, he's been very underused. With the High Republic era getting increased attention in Star Wars on-screen media, it's high time we bring one of the era's biggest figures back to popular attention. Dr. Chelly Lona Aphra is known as a resourceful archaeologist with questionable morals and servant to Dark Lord Vader. Impressed by her work with droids, Vader sought to recruit Aphra as a secret ally a little before the Battle of Yavin, and yeah, she totally has a criminal reputation with the rebels, but she's not bad. She's a chaotic Indiana Jones adjacent anti-hero of gray morality, which mainline Star Wars could use a little more of, quite frankly. I mean, sure, she robbed the sterilized Geonosian queen of her ability to effectively birth Geonosian-esque droids, stealing her last shred of hope and purpose, thereby finalizing the travesty of genocide enacted by the Empire, but she also did some genuinely heroic deeds. The Geonosian thing does sound bad, but no, actually, it's really bad. It was a bad thing to do. But she also teamed up with Luke Skywalker to defeat the queen of a parasitic species, she helped the Rebels crew break into the Tarkin Institute, and she's recovered lost art and artifacts like any good adventuring archaeologist would.
That belongs in a museum!
Shut up, dude, wrong universe. Anyway, Aphra has ties to several Star Wars heavy hitters like Vader, obviously, Boba Fett, Black Chrysanthemum, and Hera Syndulla. That, along with the fact that she is the only original Star Wars character who doesn't appear in any film to lead their own comic, makes Aphra a strong choice for a live-action series. And she doesn't even have to be the lead, she's the perfect kind of character who should pop up in as a cameo in any story set during the original trilogy. This all leads up to my personal favorite, the character who was a clear standout of Jedi Fallen Order and made an even stronger showing in Jedi Survivor with incredible and unique Force abilities like we've never seen before. Nightsister Merrin of Dathomir!
She's a witch, isn't she?
A Nightsister.
Okay, Cal Kestis is cool too, but the games are his story. Merrin's is left largely unexplored and only alluded to, and with Force abilities as unique and interesting as hers, Merrin, aka the Witch, aka the Desert Ghost, deserves her own telling. That isn't to say I don't want Cal in live action, definitely, yes, but let's talk Merrin first because she's my number one. Following the annihilation of her fellow Nightsisters by General Grievous during the Clone Wars, Merrin was one of the last of her kind, a Zabrak witch wielding a form of the Force known as magic, with a K, much different from the paths of Jedi or Sith. Left to bury her coven alone, she sought vengeance as she came to rule the Night Brothers and mastered incredibly ancient and powerful magic, including the ability to resurrect her fallen Nightsisters and essentially necromance them. She can teleport and use telekinesis with ease, enhance the power of her allies, bury this fool alive, stun, restrain, cloak herself and an entire ship, whatever this is, and in her own words, she is very good at murders. And I'm going to remind you now, she is a hero character, okay? If you didn't play the Star Wars Jedi games, you're just going to have to trust me on this one, and also start playing the games. They're so good. I digress. Between games, Merrin made a huge transformation from a largely insular, vengeful loner who'd never left Dathomir, nor known anyone outside her culture, to traveling the galaxy and using her powers for good wherever she went, eventually becoming a key figure in the Hidden Path, an effort to shield Force sensitives from the Empire. Her further adventures with the Mantis crew are explored in the novel Jedi Battle Scars, but her time on her own is a big question mark that we'd love to see answered. I personally would love it if Cal Kestis, still played by Cameron Monaghan, were to pop in from time to time, perhaps with his adventures between games without the core crew. Cal makes a ton of sense to pop up in live action just on the basis of how much actor Cameron Monaghan is him. Both characters are incredible additions to the Star Wars story, and I'm really hoping they both make it out of this game series alive so we can see them down the line. And speaking of Star Wars video game characters played by honest-to-goodness screen actors, we can't forget about Battlefront 2's Iden Versio. Played by Janina Gavankar, Iden is the main character in the game's excellent campaign mode, and she's another character who absolutely should jump to live action in anything set near the original trilogy in the canon. Basically, a second-generation Imperial born on Vardos, her dad was an ISB admiral, and she, being super focused on impressing, was the biggest tryhard in the Imperial Academy and winds up commanding Inferno Squad, which was basically a Black Ops squad sent in to clean up situations regular stormtrooper battalions couldn't handle, and let's just say they were pretty busy in those days.
We weren't expecting special forces.
That's the point, Sergeant.
Not long after the fall of the Empire at the Battle of Endor, Inferno Squad eventually switched sides. Remember in The Mandalorian when this motherfucker mentioned something called Operation Cinder shortly before finding out what blaster bolts taste like? Right, anyway, Operation Cinder is featured in Battlefront 2, and it's not long after finding out what it's all about that Iden and the remaining members of Inferno Squad make the jump to aid the Rebel Alliance and later the New Republic in fighting the Imperial Remnant. Look, the reason you eventually have to make Cal Kestis live action is because he's played by this guy, Cameron Monaghan. Same thing for Iden Versio. It seemed that when they cast Janina Gavankar in the role, that she might be perfect to spin out into live action. We always kind of thought they might, but she hasn't appeared in anything since. She was a voice in Tales of the Jedi, though. Iden is another character that would be awesome to eventually see in a live action project. Okay, so the practice of casting known actors in Star Wars parts certainly didn't start with Iden Versio. We have to talk about Sam Witwer's Starkiller for a minute and why he shouldn't make the jump to live action. Trying to be brief, Starkiller from the Star Wars Force Unleashed video games is absolutely way too overpowered, like to the point where it might actually break everything else in Star Wars if you try to add him in there. Force-fueled power fantasies are fun, but his extensive involvement with characters like Vader and Leia and the Rebel Alliance, killing certain established characters, and oh yeah, his ridiculous overpowerment sort of break the whole world. Plus, other characters tread similar paths as him, like Ahsoka herself, so he's more or less redundant on top of being a big problem for the rest of the story. Whatever you think of the sequel trilogy, it does exist, and it is canon, so it now would be weird to have a character appear with the same name as the First Order's Super Death Star, Starkiller Base. Plug the video game Starkiller in either before or after this, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. Additionally, if Sam Witwer ever does more new Star Wars, I'd rather him return to Maul's story, actually. I still want to know how that guy went from running Crimson Dawn in Solo to taking the L in his final showdown with Kenobi in Star Wars Rebels. Like, from this point to this point on the timeline is a whole movie or series or whatever by itself. Witwer should come back as Maul. But Lucasfilm has already teased Starkiller in the live-action canon. Remember in Andor when the Sith Stalker armor was just casually chilling in the background of Luthen Rael's gallery? There it is. They put that there on purpose so us nerds can connect the dots, so maybe that seed of an idea could sprout after all. Just depower the guy a little, would you? But what do you think? What established Star Wars characters do we need to see in live action? Let us know in the comments, but take your time, cause there's a bunch. Thanks for watching, and for more of them wars among the stars, check out our Comic-Con interview with the developers of Star Wars Outlaws, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.